Let Supervisor Alcorn get us started.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather. Thanks for hosting this, and also wanted to thank everybody who is participating tonight. Uh, I'm not going to speak long, and you're going to hear most of this, but for me, what I think is most important is this is a follow-on to the community meeting that was held last September. And I know both the nominator and staff left that meeting with some ideas, and there's been a good amount of work done. And look forward to the discussion tonight and also any feedback from the community. So, thank you all very much, DPD, and also Amanda and you and the rest of the team. Look forward to the discussion tonight.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us to discuss the Roland Clarke Place Comprehensive Plan Amendment. I'm Heather Springs, and I'm a planner with the Fairfax County Department of Planning and Development. I am accompanied tonight by Clara Johnson and Kazi Mohammed, also with the Planning Department. Before we get started, I'd like to get an idea of how many of you have joined us before and who may be new to this topic. If you're able to, I'm going to share a poll, and I'd just like to get some feedback from everyone. Hopefully that's showing up on your screen now. And oh, we got a lot of people coming in already. Okay. So while I let people respond, tonight we're going to be talking about the plan amendment and what's being proposed to change. At the community meeting in September 2025, we discussed the staff impact analysis for a proposed multifamily use up to 325 multifamily units. Since that meeting, the nominators have provided a new concept for a proposed 70 townhome units, which we will be discussing tonight. I will present the current comprehensive plan guidance and staff considerations through the plan amendment study. Then I will introduce the representative for the developers to present the new proposal and concept. At the end of tonight's presentation, I'll provide next steps for the plan amendment and conclude by opening up the meeting for discussion. We ask that you please stay muted through the presentation. If you have any questions or comments as we go through the presentation, you're more than welcome to put them in the chat to the host who will be monitoring. If you click on the chat window, it may say chat disabled, but there should be an option to click new chat, and you should be able to message either me or Kazi or Clara. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll. It looks like we do have a couple people that are new to this presentation for us. So I'm going to start us off with a little video that just goes into what the comprehensive plan is and what this process looks like. All right, let's see if I can share my sound and then we will start the video.
Hi, welcome to our Planning 101
Oof.
video series featuring short videos on long-range planning in Fairfax County. In this series, we'll be taking you through terms and documents that are important to long-range planning and how our residents can participate in the process. So let's get started. Do you ever wonder what determines the pattern of development in a community? Sure, people buy land and build houses, businesses, hotels, and other types of buildings. But what determines what goes where? Well, if you live in Fairfax County, you can start by looking at the comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan identifies county priorities for land use and is a guide for decisions that impact the built and natural environment. That includes what types of development are recommended where, how intense those developments might be, ensuring Fairfax County has long-term plans that promote livable, prosperous, and equitable communities. The foundational guide for all development and growth in the county, the one big long-term plan that guides it all, is the Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan. The comprehensive plan is, yes, required by state law, and it is also used as a guide for decision-making about how land is developed and used, a reference for the public on strategic goals when it comes to development in the future of the county. The comprehensive plan includes general county-wide policy recommendations for land use, housing, heritage resources, the environment and sustainability, public facilities like schools, fire stations, and parks, and transportation systems, including roads, trails, and transit, among other topics. It also includes 4 area plan volumes. Those area plans include recommendations organized by 4 geographical areas in the county. These recommendations give guidance on how land could be used in the future. But we should make it clear, the plan does not determine when or what developments will actually happen. The comprehensive plan also includes a plan map that shows recommended land uses throughout the county. Think of the comprehensive plan as a general guidance for land use, which creates the vision for the future of the county. While we have an idea of the types of uses that are preferred for the different areas of Fairfax County, it's up to the board to approve proposals to implement the plan. With the comprehensive plan, Fairfax County has a layout and a map for the future. It provides an outline for the Board of Supervisors, and neighborhoods and communities have guidelines for what can be developed and how residents in the community's priorities can be met. The comprehensive plan provides a roadmap for how the place where you live and work could change in the future. It helps guide development for the benefit of current and future residents, workers, and visitors. Thanks for watching our first short video on long-range planning. Stay tuned for more videos and to learn how you can get more involved.
All right, so in the video, she showed this map, and I want to take a minute to talk about what that means for this area. An important component of the comprehensive plan is the concept for future development map. It's the overarching guide for land use in the county. Put simply, it provides a general framework for thinking about where most of our growth is encouraged. Wheelie Reston East, which is circled on the map, is identified as a transit station area, or TSA. TSAs are areas in the county directly influenced by the presence of a metro station. These areas are where the comprehensive plan encourages growth and a mix of uses in a pedestrian-friendly form that supports the metro rail system. When talking about mixed-use development, it's described as development intensity. Floor area ratio, or FAR, is the term most used to describe intensity of development. To calculate FAR, you divide the floor area of building space by the land area in a development site. The lower the number, the less intense the development. So for example, a 1 FAR, like what's shown on the slide, would be 100,000 square feet of building space on a 100,000 square foot parcel. When talking about the quantity of residential development, we describe it as residential density. Residential density is described in dwelling units per acre. The fewer dwelling units per acre, the less dense the development. For example, a single-family detached dwelling unit development is often developed between 1 and 5 dwelling units per acre and are considered low-density development. When we see the current plan shortly, you'll notice that this site is currently planned up to 3.55 FAR, but when describing the new plan concept, we describe it in dwelling units per acre. The subject property is generally located north of Sunrise Valley Drive, south of the Dulles Toll Road, at the northwest end of Roland Clarke Place. This site is developed with a 90,000 square foot office building, and the site is located within the Wheelie TSA. The adjoining parcel to the east was redeveloped as a multifamily use. The areas to the south and southeast are developed with townhomes, and the Reston Heights development to the west contains a condo building, hotels, an office building, and a new multifamily building. 1950 Roland Clarke Place is currently planned for residential mixed use at an intensity of up to 3.55 FAR. Residential mixed use is defined in the Reston plan as a mix of existing office uses with residential and commercial uses. In the 1980s, this area was developed as an office park. Then, in 2008, a site plan was approved for this parcel, the subject property, and the neighboring parcel, which is now the point at Reston. That site plan permitted 3 new office buildings at an intensity of 3.55 FAR. The site plan was never implemented. However, the improved intensity carried over into the updated Reston Comprehensive Plan text adopted in 2015. The most recent update to the Reston Plan, adopted by the board in September of 2023, restructured the transit station area and created the Roland Clarke Place subdistrict. The current comprehensive plan guidance recommends redevelopment provisions for interparcel access to the west and a public recreation component for this site. Comprehensive plan guidance for this TSA includes 2 designations with ratio guidance for development. The residential mixed-use designation calls for 75% residential and 25% non-residential split of uses. These areas are generally beyond a quarter mile, but within a half mile of the metro station. Transit station mixed-use areas are those closest to the metro station and call for a 50-50 split. Before we move on to the next slide, the plan envisions 75% residential for Roland Clarke, and we're going to see how that looks in current development. The proposed plan amendment considers 100% residential use on the site. So as part of the analysis, staff reviewed the land use guidance and the existing development ratios. When considering the existing ratios, we analyze both existing development and development that has zoning approvals but have not yet been built. We found that in the residential mixed-use areas south of the Dulles Toll Road, it is currently a 61% non-residential and 39% residential use split. If the proposed plan amendment was adopted and implemented, the new ratio for the Wheelie residential mixed-use areas south of the Dulles Toll Road are estimated to be 48% residential and 52% non-residential. This is consistent with the ratios that the comprehensive plan envisions for residential mixed-use areas. Staff studied the impacts of a proposed residential development, and the impacts analysis includes a review of the mix of land uses and compatibility with surrounding area, broader county housing goals, impacts to the transportation network, schools, parks and recreation, and the environment. Fairfax County Department of Transportation noted expectations for bike and pedestrian connectivity to the west, as well as the inclusion of a shared use path to connect with the regional trail planned south of the Dulles Toll Road. Potential roadway and transportation improvements would be determined during a rezoning and built alongside development. A schools analysis indicated sufficient capacity for the proposed plan amendment density. County Parks Authority staff indicated that new residential development would have to meet the county's urban parks framework, which recommends 1.5 acres of dedicated park space per 1,000 residents for new residential developments for the transit station area. An environmental review of the proposed plan amendment indicates this site will need to address residential noise in proximity to the toll road, as well as stormwater management improvements through a future zoning review. Finally, the county's land use goals and housing objectives promote new housing opportunities, particularly with access to affordability, commitments to recreation and healthy communities, and environmental sustainability. All new housing developments must meet the county's ADU and WDU policies to provide affordable housing opportunities. At the last community meeting in September 2025, we heard from the community a few specific comments about this area. A primary concern for this community is traffic consideration, including number of trips, speed of travelers, and queuing along Roland Clarke Place at Sunrise Valley Drive, and pedestrian safety at the cross points, particularly for children during school bus times. We also heard comments regarding limited on-street parking availability and construction noise and safety considerations. Staff is generally supportive of the transition to housing on this subject site. Shown here is a concept for townhomes provided by the nominator. This concept is illustrative and does not reflect final staff comments or zoning approvals. A rezoning will be required prior to any site development approvals. A final staff recommendation for the comprehensive plan amendment may include guidance for vehicle and pedestrian access to the west, enhancements to pedestrian safety and level of comfort along Roland Clarke Place, and provisions for an activated public urban park space. Before we move into a presentation by the representative for the developer, I want to take a minute to talk about where we are in the plan amendment process. Staff has met with other agencies and interested parties and gathered comments on the proposed plan amendment through the impacts analysis phase. We've held community meetings, and we're now at the stage of finalizing a staff recommendation. Tonight, we are meeting with you to provide an update about this plan amendment study and to hear your thoughts about the proposed change to the comprehensive plan guidance. A staff report, including the final staff recommendation, will be published ahead of public hearings. Public hearings have not yet been scheduled. I'd now like to introduce the representative from Cooley, Amanda Williams, to present developer considerations and concepts.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Heather, for that. As she mentioned, my name is Amanda Williams. I am a land use attorney with Cooley. Really happy to be here tonight on behalf of the property owner Stewart Investment Partners. Thanks, Heather. You can advance that forward. So again, she provided a great overview and a little bit of the background here. We filed this request for a plan amendment for this site back in 2022, actually, and have been looking for redevelopment options, frankly, for this challenging location since about 2017. As mentioned, the current comprehensive plan recommendations call for a mix of commercial and residential at about a 3.55 FAR. That use mix and that intensity just simply is not feasible for a site like this one. So we originally requested a modification to the comprehensive plan for primarily residential and public recreation space at that 2.5 FAR, which represented about 350,000 square feet and 350 multifamily units. The property owners were planning for an apartment building with outdoor space. Next slide. We held a community meeting, as Heather mentioned, back in September. We have also met with the Reston Planning and Zoning Committee and have been coordinating with Supervisor Alcorn's office and Commissioner Carter, and have now revised our proposal, as you can see reflected here in red on this slide, to request an amendment to reflect redevelopment for residential and associated open space at about 20 dwelling units to the acre. The vision is now for a townhouse, a less dense townhouse development and associated outdoor space to complement and complete this neighborhood. We are excited to be coming to you with this update. We think this is, a better option and a better outcome for everyone. Next slide. I do want to take a quick step back. I know there's a lot of you that were at the previous meeting, but some of you that were not. As reference, we've been at this for many years at this point to make changes to the planning and development options for this site. This slide here gives you an overview of the specific challenges that this site faces as it relates to the currently recommended mix of both residential and commercial. The building on the site is functionally obsolete at this point, or getting close to that. It is a late 70s, early 80s office building with growing vacancy, which has worsened since the SSPA was filed in 2022. We are effectively at about 50% vacancy of the space in the building, and it's a diminishing value to the building, of course. Not good for the property owner, obviously, also not good for the county or for the adjacent uses and residents, particularly as time goes on and we are trending in the direction of the building being almost completely vacant. Demand, as a lot of you have probably heard, is really shifting away from the suburban office building like this one towards the more amenitized, walkable new spaces closer to the metro stops. This site specifically, size is a bit of a concern. It is 3.5 acres and at the end of Roland Clarke Place, making it hard for any meaningful commercial development to be brought there without any passing car or foot traffic. The site is also now surrounded by residential development, as most all of you probably well know on the call, with the fairly recent development of the 3 immediately adjacent sites with townhomes and apartments. And these developments have changed the fabric of the area, making it almost impossible to pull people behind your homes to any kind of commercial use that would frankly probably also bring unwanted traffic to the neighborhood. Next slide. Just to visually orient you one more time here, the image helps to illustrate that the residential development you all know well, that's really changed the fabric of the area of what it was when the current comprehensive plan language was originally developed. Again, at the end of Roland Clarke Place, you can see here the Valley and Park and the Sunrise Square townhomes just south of the site, the Point at Reston directly to the east, and the Mercer condominium building to the west. Next slide. As another quick reminder, or for those of you that were not involved in our initial meetings, here is the concept we shared for the multifamily option. About 350,000 square feet, about 325, 350 multifamily units. Next slide. And here is the updated concept for the townhomes at about 20 dwelling units to the acre, 70 to 75 townhomes. Concept is the key word here. As Heather did explain, we are at the planning stage and not the zoning stage. So what we're asking right now is whether putting residential townhomes here instead of the higher density mix of commercial and residential is a good idea. A more detailed zoning process would come after this comp plan amendment process, where we would get into details like very specific layout, unit orientation, sidewalk widths, detailed traffic analysis, setbacks, etc. Nevertheless, we have been sharing concepts with staff for what this could look like and what we would expect to pursue in a zoning application in the future, and that's what this represents. The idea, as you can tell, is to be a continuation of the existing development to the south, which was contemplated when those townhomes were originally approved and built, to really provide a consistent, cohesive pattern of development. Importantly, this concept change represents about a 70% decrease in daily trips from the multifamily proposal that we talked about in the last meeting, and an even larger decrease, obviously, from what is currently permitted under the comprehensive plan. And that was the biggest feedback that we received, and we kind of heard last time we met that the previous proposal was just too dense and would bring too many trips to Roland Clarke Place. We would still be providing enhanced pedestrian access between and among the developments here, including access to the west and cohesive pocket park and linear park spaces that would connect well to the adjacent existing promenades and open spaces. And we've also discussed, and I just want to note briefly, with both staff and the Reston Association, the possibility of enhancing that small playground that exists on the east side of this block. You can see kind of highlighted here. That entire green space is owned by Reston Association, and the playground is a fairly small part of it, and there are certainly opportunities we could explore for enhancing that playground, as well as incorporating additional neighborhood amenities in that green space for the community here to enjoy. Next slide. So to round us out here, I just wanted to reiterate some of the specific community benefits that we think would come along with this change, most of which I already touched on, but at a high level, we do think this is a good opportunity to modify the plan to allow redevelopment of this aging office building to be more consistent with its residential surroundings. So this change would memorialize in the comp plan a lower density, more neighborhood appropriate development, provide the opportunity for increased and enhanced pedestrian and vehicular connectivity, offer that significant reduction in traffic, allow for new and enhanced public recreation spaces, as well as offer the opportunity to make safety modifications to Roland Clarke Place through that follow-on zoning process we've been talking about. Next slide. So that sums it up for us. We do hope these changes feel responsive from our last meeting, because that certainly was our intent in making this shift. And we're happy to take any questions in coordination with staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda. So this concludes our presentation for tonight. Thank you all for taking the time to join us. This slide includes links to websites to help you stay informed. We'll also add this information to the chat to make it easy for copying. The presentation will be posted on our Fairfax County project website. And I'd now like to open the floor for discussion. We have Department of Planning and Development staff, County Department of Transportation staff, and representatives for the proposed development here to answer your questions, join in the discussion, and listen to your feedback. Please feel free to use the raise hand feature to be recognized to speak, or you can send messages in the chat to us. I'll start us off with an easy ball question. Are there any specific questions that you've heard about anything you may have seen or heard tonight? Anyone feel free to start.
I don't see the
Craig.
raise hand option.
Oh.
Sorry. Just a quick question. I heard a lot of numbers cited. Were there any numbers having to do with the deltas in tax revenue? Once this project is complete, what that delta is going to be for the county, and is that in consideration? Does that factor into the decision at all from the county's point of view?
Heather, if it's okay, I'll take this one at Supervisor Alcorn.
Please.
Yeah, this site-specific tax revenue is never a consideration for me, and it's not something that county staff analyzes for any specific project.
Good to know. Thanks.
All right. I see Craig, you got your hand up.
Yeah. Thanks, Heather. So I'd like to start by saying thank you to Heather for summarizing well the feedback from the community on the first phone call, especially highlighting our concerns about the area. I thought you did an excellent job summarizing that, as well as addressing that both in your comments, and then to Amanda, thank you to you as well. I thought you also did a very good job of hearing the concerns of the neighborhood about existing safety challenges along Roland Clarke Place, and our concerns that the high density would have brought in terms of additional traffic. In comparison, I think this is a much better plan. I can't speak for everybody in the community. I haven't had a chance to. I should back up and say I'm the president of the Homeowners Association of Valley and Park. So we'll certainly be presenting some of this information at our upcoming annual meeting, as well as soliciting more feedback from the community. But overall, my first impression is favorable, and wanted to thank everyone for hearing us. I do have 3 questions from what I heard, and I'll start with the first one. I know that drawing that you showed was just a proposed drawing, but today there's a walkway on the hill. It appears between our neighborhood and this neighborhood, there's 2 buildings that appear to be situated where there's a current walkway. And in fact, on the prior slide where you showed the walking path, that's very much a live and actively used pedestrian pathway. And I didn't know if the recommendation was to put homes on top of that pathway.
I'll let Amanda speak to a future concept, but I will say that staff recommendation will include the requirement for the continuation of that existing trail. It still will remain part of our recommendation. But Amanda, if you want to speak to the concept.
Yes, I think part of the concept here, and to your point, it is a concept, so there's opportunity for shifts here, but was to have those buildings line up appropriately with the existing buildings there along Payson's Way. And if we were to impact that trail, it would be relocated, and that trail will not be lost. Like that, I know that is utilized, and we hope with this proposal we will ultimately enhance the connectivity here and kind of accessibility and experience on the trails. But that feedback is noted.
Yeah, I'd say associated with that, we're fortunate in our community and in the adjacent community that we can access our homes from the back and the front. All of the homes have, I believe I'm speaking correctly, all the homes have 2-car garages and then front doors as well. So when I see a positioning of homes like that, as well as the homes on the 2 bookends of the community, it doesn't appear that you've made the same sort of allowance for front and rear entrance. So what is shown as quasi park to the right hand side, if people are pulling into garages, then that won't exist. Likewise, if there's any homes that are parallel to our homes, then it almost begs the question, would they use the same alleyway as we use behind the back of our community to get to our garages, to get to their garages? So I just wanted to call that out. I know, again, it's just a concept, but this drawing may be optimistic in terms of what townhome owners in this area expect to be able, where to be able to park their cars, etc. So don't know that that's a question, more of a comment, but
but that's helpful feedback as we think about a concept moving forward in terms of because it's a fair point, what the residents in the adjacent neighborhoods are experiencing, and we want to make sure we're consistent and cohesive in what we're developing here. I will just note briefly that in terms of the HOA documents for your development, they do address, and I don't remember all of the details off the top of my head, that like the potential for some shared access along Pace. I think there was an access easement granted at the forefront, because it was contemplated that at some point this office building may be developed with townhomes, which we are now in the scenario of talking about. So that's something we'll look at as well as we get to the details of this. But thanks for that feedback.
Got it. One additional thing, I believe, Heather, you mentioned the possibility of noise abatement along Dulles Toll Road. Certainly in other parts of the community, we've seen these very large structures go up to, especially along, I think it's Route 7, and didn't know if, I'm not aware, well, maybe there is some of that in Reston today, but do you know if there's any of that that's being imagined in this area now? Thoughts about how that would change the aesthetic?
Sound walls is an option for noise reduction from the toll road. As you said, we see this a lot throughout some of our larger highways. That would be something the options for noise abatement would be discussed in a zoning stage. But it is one of those requirements that we acknowledge would be something that would have to be considered with townhomes. So, with the multifamily option, there was the option for putting the garage on the back, and that works for noise reduction the way it does for Point at Reston right next door. So that would be something that the applicant would consider through the zoning stage.
Yeah, and can I add?
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Claire.
Oh no, go ahead, Amanda. You might say what I was about to say. Go ahead.
I was just going to note that we acknowledge that we would have to study the noise that would be a requirement in the zoning, and we would have to mitigate it to the required levels. And it could be a noise wall. That could be the most effective way to do that. And I will note that the Faraday Park townhomes that are in Reston, they have utilized a sound wall for that townhouse development, which they've done well and pretty successfully. So I just wanted to acknowledge that, and we'll have that conversation in more detail as we get to the zoning. But go ahead, Claire. I'm sorry to cut you off.
No, that's okay. You did not. I think there was somebody else speaking. It might have been Clara.
No, I don't think I have anything to add, just to indicate that design is one way to try to address sound, and it also the construction type and of these townhomes, that would be an additional mitigation measure as well.
I
will note. I think we have. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry. If I can just one more thing before I go. I will note we do have homes along Sunrise Valley Drive, which has significantly less traffic than Dulles Toll Road, and there are some noise concerns there. And I believe the builder might have put in extra thick glass along the front, but I'm not certain of that. The last thing is this blue arrow shows a potential exit behind the Mercer and the Weston. Following the last meeting, we did engage with some of the owners in that direction, and we also noted that where that road is looking to connect is actually into what essentially is another alley behind the Weston. So I don't know if there's been any kind of study about the suitability for pedestrian traffic to go in that direction. Generally, the people that the operators of the owners of the Sheridan were amenable to more traffic coming, wrapping around the Weston and coming out by the light by the Sheridan. But we all had concerns that that current road is not very wide. Literally looks like an alleyway for, back entrance to the Weston, and likely would need to be expanded. So if you could just note that for future traffic studies, I don't know if that's a Reston responsibility, a developer responsibility, or both.
Yep. So I know that Amanda has been exploring that cross connection through this development proposal, and that's something that transportation is considering as part of their guidance. So the plan recommendation as of right now calls for that connection to be realized through future redevelopment. And then our plan recommendation is likely to carry that language over to require a cross connection to the west. So that would also be something that's explored in design in a zoning phase.
And just quickly on that, I think the vehicular connection would be prioritized in the back there, and the pedestrian would likely be prioritized towards the front. And we have looked further into that. Good to hear that you've had some positive conversations. There is some existing easements that have already been granted to make that connection that have been in place for some time, but just never been utilized. The language of those, we would just have to maybe kind of expand upon what is already there. So we feel, hopeful about that ultimate connect. Thank you for that feedback.
Got it. If I could just close with thank you again for your comments up front, and especially your commitment to the improvements of safety along Roland Clarke Place. That's very important to all of us in this area.
Great. Thank you, Craig, for participating. It looks like we've got a hand up from Evan. I think he was next in line.
Yes, I just want to say that I support this being as dense as possible. I just think that generally the most pressing issue right now is just like a shortage of housing, and anywhere I see where I can push for more of that, I would support, generally speaking. And I just think that the traffic concerns are a little overblown, because it seems that like every single new development, that's always a concern. Um, but here it's still like transit oriented development. I live a mile up the street. I don't even own a car. I walk to work. I walk to the grocery store. I could live the exact same lifestyle right there. And when you have like lower density, it just pushes people out to where they need to drive a car instead of where it's a choice. Uh, so I just wanted to say that I definitely support that being as dense as it can be. Um, Although obviously, I have to compromise with other people. Uh, and I do also think, considering the area, that there definitely needs to be a lot of consideration for a wall to prevent the noise and the particulate matter pollution that'll come from the highway. So I just wanted to say that.
Cool. Thank you for sharing, Evan. I appreciate it. Looks like our next hand up is Greg. Greg, if you want to come off mute.
Yeah, can you hear me right now?
I sure can.
Okay, great. I couldn't get the video to work. I apologize to everyone. I'm doing this on my cell phone. I can figure out video on a computer, but I haven't been able to do it on a cell phone yet. So I'm glad at least you can hear me. Thanks for putting this together. I'm in a similar position as Craig was that just recently spoke. My name's Greg, though, Greg. So I am the president of the Mercer, which is the adjacent property at Reston Heights on the west side. And so Craig actually answered. We haven't even spoke, so I can't say that we collaborated on this, but he actually answered both my questions, but I still need to regurgitate them. Being that we live here in the west side, otherwise known as the Mercer here, Definitely, I was getting ready to write Supervisor Alcorn. So I'm glad you're on the call, Supervisor. And the wall, the toll road traffic noise wall, definitely needed. I spoke to association council here, and they were saying that process does take time to get going from beginning to end. I understand it comes to the basic where you have a decibel meter. You come up on some of the units in my building on the back. We have a front and back side to our building. It's extremely loud. You do not need an alarm clock when you live here because you know it's 5, 6 a.m. because you'll hear the cars. So I agree with Craig and the other gentleman that a wall is needed. So that part takes care of that answer. So I'd like to think that I heard in the zoning process, we need the wall. Second one was the traffic. The proposed, obviously, Roland Clarke is the current go-to. I didn't hear the acronym SJR at all on light coming out on Roland Clarke and Sunrise. So when I'm done speaking, I'll let staff and the presenters address an SGR on Roland Clarke and Sunrise. But I do want to, it's very important, I do need to go on the record for the yellow line on the PowerPoint. Like the gentleman said, the way that the word proposed, I understand, was used. That alley won't work. That's the amount of cost to make that alley into a road, bring the road up to the corner of the two buildings and have it come out Sheridan. Of course, it can be done, but it's going to be a challenge and an considerable expense. There is a service road. That same road does exist behind our building. The problem is this: all of our dog walkers use that pedestrian walkway that Craig was, and their lives are at jeopardy on a daily basis. Okay, we've getting multiple complaints that people. Also, we have 2 parking levels in our building, and one of them feeds out onto that road, that service road. People making left-hand turns coming out of there, it's a blind hill. The cars right now, most of the current cars that are using that road are guests of the Westin and employees of the Westin. Does have 10-mile-an-hour speed limit currently, and we're almost having fatalities currently at 10 miles an hour. If that becomes an actual road, 25-mile-an-hour speed limit, et cetera, I'm not a lawmaker or police officer, but it does bring up a considerable consideration of potential hazard for our dog walkers. Our dog walkers are not allowed to use the front of the building. There's currently signage and other things in place, no dog use in the front. That's why they come out the back. So I've spoken too much now. My mom told me, get your point across and be quiet. If someone could answer the SJR, Roland Clarke and Sunrise, and then just confirm if we could get that sound wall. Thank you very much.
Happy to touch briefly on the SJR thing, like not edit in a full technical detail, but for that traffic signal, that at Roland Clarke and Sunrise Valley, that was proffered with the original approval of the Point apartment building there, which applies to this property. And so we would expect that we would be required to do an additional a follow-on study to see if that traffic signal is justified. And for everybody here, the SJR process is a process to analyze that intersection. And I know there's FCDOT people in the line that could explain this much better than I, but to see if a signal is justified at that intersection. And so if it were to be justified, we would be as the developer of this, this development, we would be required to put that signal in. We don't control whether it is justified, whether it is called for based on our development, but we would do that analysis certainly as a part of the zoning process.
Thank you, Amanda, for answering that. While we're on that topic, I got a question in the chat that I want to give FCDOT a second to address. The speed limit on Roland Clarke is currently 25 miles per hour, and it is too fast. Is the speed limit for Roland Clarke going to be addressed through this process? FCDOT, if John or Taylor want to come off and address that question for us.
Hi, good evening. John King, Transportation Planner, Fairfax County Department of Transportation. Happy to address the question in chat. And probably have a little bit of background noise here. My son is working on something. So basically to change, first up front, the county, FCDOT and our comp plan cannot set traffic or speed limits. We don't have the authority to do that. VDOT does maintain the roadways. They do have a formal process we can help with to request that they basically study the roadway. And so they would require a traffic study. They'd look at things like traffic volume, traffic speed, other considerations like safety, factors like that. And then ultimately it would need to be approved through their district engineer to change the speed limit. So that there's a process to do that. But it would not be through FCDOT directly or by the comp plan process we're going through tonight. And then very briefly, just as a follow-up, I heard the SJR mention that's a signal justification report. Again, that's an engineering study. It goes to the VDOT process. And it would be, again, looking at things like if you meet specific criteria to justify that signal, so traffic volume, safety, impact of traffic operations like flow through the adjacent streets, things like that. So a couple of VDOT processes, we're happy to help with those, but we wouldn't go through the county directly.
Heather, could I jump in real quick,
Yeah,
John?
absolutely.
Thank you for that, John. And I'm wondering, we do have some new authority that we're just about to start piloting with the speed limit reductions from 25 to 20 on selected streets. Do you know off the top of your head, would this be disqualified for any reasons for consideration for that pilot?
That's a really good question, Supervisor Alcorn. And I know we're calling it a slower streets program. And we do have some flexibility in these more dense sort of urbanizing areas to work with VDOT to get sort of alternative standards. And so that's something we could follow up with. I'm not as familiar with it myself, but happy to follow up. I know the person works.
Yeah, thank you, John. Let's definitely do that. I frankly, it's all new, so I'm not completely familiar with what's allowed and what's not. But yeah, let's do follow up on that separate from this meeting.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Appreciate it. Greg, I hope that answered all your questions. You still have your hand up, so I want to see if you have any more questions before we move on.
No, that's good. I think with the wall, I think we can follow up. I'll still send my email then to Supervisor Alcorn and thanking him for being on the call tonight. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. I appreciate it. It looks like our next hand up is Jordan.
Hi there. I just wanted to thank you guys for, updating the proposal and the effort that you guys put into kind of researching and hearing our, different points of concern. I just wanted to voice, obviously still the same concern that you guys are working on is just the safety and traffic along Roland Clarke. I live in the Sunrise Square community, and just with two little kids, turning out of the neighborhood is, dangerous every single day and walking. So thank you guys for continuing to make that a priority, with the project moving forward.
Of course. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for joining us. Steve, looks like you're our next hand up.
Yep, sorry, it keeps going up and down because people keep asking my questions, but that's okay. So I'm confused about to the west side, you got the blue arrow. I see the pedestrian egress, ingress, whatever you call it. How is there buy-in by the other properties to actually have vehicular egress? I'm confused there. Is that a sure thing, or is it just a decision the developer will make? And two, sound wall, is that a VDOT provided item? Because I'm asking because I was a victim of the Route 7 sound wall. And the only thing I'd recommend is thick trees do a much better job than sound walls. Just throwing that out there. I don't really care one way or the other. But my main question is about how guaranteed is that, is it going to be that vehicles are going to be able to take that route that the big blue arrow shows?
Sorry, you can go ahead, Heather.
Nope, you can go ahead.
Yeah, and Heather can chime in if needed, but I'll just note that it's a current, that connection to the west is currently recommended under the comprehensive plan, and staff would carry that forward, and we would intend to pursue it because we don't own obviously the adjacent parcel. It would have to be in coordination with them. As I referenced briefly, we've done some additional research since the last meeting, and there is an existing easement that contemplates that connection being made. So that property owner has already granted easements for it, but we may just need to expand. We would need to expand upon it, and some of the stuff we've been talking about how we would make that work, like that would all be discussed, and we would get into more details on that on the zoning phase, if that helps.
Yeah, and I was just gonna echo the same thing that the recommendation for the west parcel access would remain in the plan language, but design would ultimately happen during the zoning phase, and how that gets worked out with the neighboring property owners would occur through that process.
So does that mean if they say no, you'd have to pursue an eminent domain kind of thing, or what happens then? I'm just curious.
Clara, if you are able to answer that, I don't actually know what our process would be at that point.
No, well, I think what ultimately the development needs to demonstrate that there is adequate access and circulation for the development. So I think what the comprehensive plan is doing is stating we want this, absolutely, we want this access pursued. And we hope that those answers, we get answers about that during the rezoning process. But otherwise, there needs to be demonstration that this is really advancing the envisioned connections in the Reston plan. So I'm not answering that seems like an unlikely outcome, I would say, but first things first, we ask that this development pursue that access.
And one thing I'll just add quickly on that is that the current comprehensive plan has a much higher density. Obviously, it's called for this access. Staff intends to carry that language forward, and we intend to pursue this connection. But just for some, at a high level, we are reducing the density here in terms of trips and people that are going to this site significantly. So I think, we will have to demonstrate adequate access. We will continue to pursue that. I just think it's a little bit less of a, high priority generally, given the extreme reduction in density we're proposing here. But that's something we'll continue to.
Thank you, Amanda. So it looks like we have about 5 minutes left. I see 2 more hands up. So we'll run through some final questions, and if we don't get to your questions, please feel free to send me an email. My contact information is in the chat. So Craig, if you want to go ahead with your next question or comment.
Yeah, two quick comments to add. One, I just noticed on this drawing that it appears to show a crossroad right in front of Point Reston, almost continuing straight across into the community. You might want to walk the ground because that would be very difficult to pull off. There's not a lot of room there. from where our townhomes end to where that road would start. There's currently, that's part of that trail, et cetera. And then the other thing in terms of the access to the back, I just wanted to reiterate today, Roland Clarke Place handles all the traffic from Valiant Park, Sunrise Square, Point Reston, and an office building, that pond building that's down in the lower right-hand corner. It's too much traffic today, and putting more traffic on that road in any form is a lot. So please do, by all means possible, pursue that back road. That's all.
Understood. Thanks, Craig.
Thanks, Craig. Kelly, it looks like your hand is up, so you'll be our last comment for tonight.
Yeah, I might have misheard you, but did you at one point say, or somebody say that in the HOA docs for Valiant Park, that back area would have access through Payson's, so that they would be traveling on Payson's Way as well to get back into their townhouses?
Amanda, do you
I'm
want
gonna
to take
misspeak because I don't have those details. Like, I don't have the documents in front of me. I just, there was some acknowledgement of the possibility of an extension of townhomes onto this in those documents into this parcel. So there was provisions related to access and that kind of thing. So I'm happy to talk about that in more detail after the fact. But I don't want to misspeak on exactly what the documents say. There was just some acknowledgement of the future development of this site in the existing HOA docs.
Yeah, I remember when we purchased, but for people to come off Roland Clarke Place and go on to Payson's Way through, if they don't live in Valiant Park community, I mean, that would be just ridiculous. So all right. Yeah, if you can look into that, that would be great. I mean, I guess unless it's just an easement on the other side, but maybe I misheard that they would go through Payson's Way.
Yeah, and just generally thank you to everyone that's here, but also to the presidents of the HOAs. I'm glad you guys, are here, and we'll be able to get your contact information. As we've talked about, we're at this kind of, is this a good idea to put residential here at this density phase? But as we get to the follow-on zoning, we'll certainly want to reach out to you guys and, sit down with the board and get your feedback so that we can be incorporating that feedback as we get to this more detailed phase that would come next.
Hi, my name is Eva, and I just don't have the ability to raise my hand. I know you guys are almost wrapping up. Can you hear me?
Yep.
I live in Sunrise Square Place, and the reason, we moved in here 6 months ago. The reason we moved in here because it's so, at least quiet. As Craig mentioned, and many others have raised the concern about density and the traffic in this area. If you plan to have that traffic routed to Roland Clarke, it is nothing but a disaster for the community that we are in here. It's a very small area that we all live in a Sunrise Square Place. Like, we are 44 families, 34 townhomes, and 10 of the condo. It is, at this very minute, it is already very, very difficult to navigate in Roland Clarke Place. So having to have your community to route the same way, it'll really impact a lot in our community.
Thank you, Eva, for sharing. And that's one of the reasons that staff generally recommends or is going to continue to recommend the additional access to the west. That would redundancy in traffic patterns would help reduce some of that traffic flow on Roland Clarke. And ultimately that would be the goal. So thank you for sharing your insights. We appreciate that. I do know that we have one more hand up. Sandra, you've had your hand up for a few minutes. So if you want to go ahead and come off mute.
I'm so sorry, Heather. I was late to the meeting. I don't know if you already said this. Are we able to get the deck, a copy of this deck?
Yes, it will be published on our website. It takes me a couple of days to get it in the format that it can go on our website and get it published. So it'll probably be next week, but we'll get it uploaded to the website.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
And lastly, I'm sorry, this is Sharon. I cannot raise my hand either for some reason. I'm just curious if you can review real quick what the timeline is looking like. I don't recall that being mentioned.
Yeah. So we don't have public hearing dates scheduled just yet. But so tonight, we're having tonight's community meeting. We have another Reston PNC meeting coming up in a couple weeks. And then we'll have public hearings scheduled once we get the staff recommendation finalized. So that'll probably be over the course of the next few months. We'll have those dates ready and probably posted online within the next month. So keep an eye on our project website. And I have some contact information for the HOA presidents in this area. So we'll also send, once we have those dates finalized, we'll send out notices to everyone. Any other questions before we close out tonight?
Can you go back to the previous slide that you had all the links, please?
Yeah, absolutely.
Is it possible to have those links pasted in our chat too, so we can also go to those sites?
Yep,
Please? Thank you.
Yeah, I will send it again.
And Heather, while you're doing that, I'll fill a little bit of time if that's okay.
Course.
So, yeah, just thank you to everybody participating in the meeting today, particularly the leadership of the community of several communities right around here. I think I'm very encouraged with the feedback. I know there are a number of unresolved questions, but I think this is a good starting point to figure out a way to make sure that this not only doesn't negatively impact your community, but maybe in some ways could actually help address some of the problems and issues that you're facing now. So thanks everybody for being involved and taking the time out on a Monday evening.
All right. Thank you, Supervisor Alcorn. Thank you all for joining us tonight. We really appreciate your time and commitment to being a part of this process. Please keep an eye on our project website. We'll push updates as soon as we have them. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please feel free to email me at any time. And I'll leave this up for a few more minutes as people leave out of the meeting, grab it. But thank you again for joining us tonight, everyone.
Thank you.